I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for coming. And now, before we kick everything off, we have a few words from our great chair, Brett Mills.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Brett Millis, and I'm the current chair of the Linn County Democrats. And I'm really excited to see so many people here. I'm so glad you came out. You know, right after the election in 2016, our Central Committee meetings, we started seeing huge turnouts. We started having record turnouts at our monthly meetings. And I think everybody looked at what happened at the election, then they started seeing what was happening in Des Moines, and the crowds kept getting bigger, and we're getting more and more new people all the time. So that's really a good sign. And the thing is, there's all this energy. Everybody's got all this energy in terms of what can I do. So now with the coordinated campaign, and with all our good candidates, great candidates that we're going to have, we're finally going to start to do something. So I really want to thank the IDP and Kevin and Blaine for all their help here in Linn County. And I'm really looking forward to us having a successful election. And now's the time to get organized and really get moving. So I just want to thank you all for coming out and for all your hard work that I know you're all going to do. That's a lot of you have already done so far. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Kevin.
Thanks. And also, before we get started, I want to give a shout out to all the elected officials and candidates in the room. So if you're an elected official or candidate, could you just stand up and say your name and where you're running? That's it.
Rob Hogue, State Senator, Senate District 33, Southeast, Northeast, and a little bit of Southwest Cedar Rapids.
Representative Art Stave, House District 66, Northeast Cedar Rapids.
Tracy Eller, candidate for House District 70.
Eric Beardy, candidate for House District 67, Northeast Cedar Rapids, West Marion, Hiawatha, and Robbins.
Christian Andrews, I'm running for Iowa House District 95.
Sarah Hines here for Courtney Rowe. I wish I was running, but Courtney Rowe is running. She's at an event tonight. She's running for U.S. Congress District 1.
Oh, and I believe we have another elected official that just walked in.
Hi, Ashley. I'm running City Council District 5.
And I also want to give a shout out to Christine Lewert for here with Flip It Iowa. Flip It Iowa is doing some really great work, so I encourage everybody to talk to Christine after the meeting and see how you can get involved. So with that, I think we're gonna kick this off and get started. Now, I don't need to tell everybody here how important this election is. It truly is make or break. Oh, sorry, yes.
Could you introduce yourself?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm Kevin Burgess. I'm the 1st District Organizer with the Iowa Democratic Party. Grew up on a farm. I'm from a farm in outside of Cascade, Iowa, so I'm a good 1st District boy and really excited to be here. Now, yeah, so you guys know how important this election is. If we can't win this year, with everything that's going on in the State House, budget crisis, mental health crisis, this tax bill that's coming through, and everything going on in DC, when are we going to be able to win? The conditions are right. However, it's not just going to happen. Everybody talks about the blue wave and is getting excited about it, but if we don't put in the work, we're going to wake up on November 7th very disappointed. So I really appreciate everybody coming out tonight as we talk about how we're going to win in November. So kind of diving in, we're going to, agenda for tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the lay of the land, where things have gone wrong in the past, and how we use that to inform the 2018 campaign. So a little bit of an overview I think is important at first. As I'm sure we all know, Democrats outpace Republicans in Linn County by about 9,000. No party is about 6,000 more than Democrats in the county. So we're not going to win with just Democrats. We need to be talking to our no party friends and family and community members. Some other really important numbers. Democrats that voted in 12 and 14, but not 16, 1,000. Democrats that didn't vote in 16, 8,000. And what's really important, Democrats that voted in 12 and 16, but not in the midterms, 6,500. With for no party, that's 10,000. And when you realize that Rod Blum's vote margin in 2014, a little more than 6,500. So in the bluest county, in the 1st district, we need to drive up those margins so that we have a little bit of security when we lose in some of these more rural red areas. So I just want everybody to kind of be thinking about that as we move along. Now, as we've been getting ready for 2018, we've really been listening to you and your past experiences. Because everybody that I've talked to, almost everybody has a horror story about the coordinated campaign. In the past, it's either been very top-down with orders coming from Des Moines or DC. It's been, frankly, uncoordinated with poor communication, people knocking doors the day after another group knocks doors. And organizers will sometimes come in and discount the local experience of people that have worked 10 cycles in the district. So I want you to know that everybody at the Iowa Democratic Party has heard your concerns and are really dedicated to making this year the best coordinated campaign yet. Which brings me to the 2018 campaign for Iowa. This year is going to be locally driven and locally controlled. It's going to be a partnership between state and county parties that's going to touch every community. When we're organizing Linn, there's a lot more to Linn County than just Cedar Rapids, and we're going to take that into account. This year, it's going to be collaborative. Nobody has a monopoly on good ideas. We can all learn from each other, and we have to in order to build the best campaign that we can. And another point that I'm really proud of is that while metrics are really important for a campaign, so we can track progress and know where we're at, we cannot prioritize metrics at the expense of relationships. Relationships are what is going to make us win. And so we're really prioritizing that this year. And so to accomplish all of these goals, we're going to utilize the neighborhood team model popularized by President Obama and obviously utilized to much great effect. Okay, so what is the neighborhood team model? So neighborhood team organizing is characterized by a group of individuals working together with a team leader to organize a specific geographic area. Because to win, we need to expand and turn out the electorate. And so the way the team model differs from, the traditional organizing model is in a traditional organizing model, you'll have a field organizer that's recruiting volunteers and saying, okay, we're going to call in here and then knock these doors. And so with the neighborhood team model, as opposed to having an organizer dictate where and what the volunteer activities are going to be, instead they work with the team and team members to figure out a strategy, and the organizers are there to support the work of the team, not to dictate. And so why the team model? Local control. When people are organizing in their community, they get to decide how they want to organize. And the reason why this is great is because then we can tailor the campaign to each specific area's needs. It's not one size fits all. Because for example, what works here in Cedar Rapids might not work out in Mount Vernon. And so the team model takes into account these differences. Also, one of the reasons why we're really excited about the neighborhood team model is because if done right, this can outlast the 2018 election. A fantastic example of that is the Mount Vernon Women. They got started in 2012 and are still going incredibly strong and are a great built-in organizing structure in the Mount Vernon area. So that's a real positive of this model. And another reason why we're going with neighborhood teams is because it distributes responsibility amongst volunteers. So volunteers have real ownership over the work they're doing. And when people have more ownership over what they're doing, the work is more rewarding and you work harder because it's yours. And last but not least, it means a lot when you're working in your community. When you knock on a door or make a phone call and say, hey, you know, I'm calling from 3 blocks down and I just want to let you know how important this election is. People say, oh yeah, I mean, I know over there. And so it's just a way to open people up. Now, let's get into a little bit more of the specifics about how the team structure works. The team model uses the snowflake structure, yeah, we're snowflakes, to delegate responsibility. And the structure creates shared responsibility while also allowing volunteers to work independently. And so a team will have multiple roles organized under a team leader. Now let's kind of dig into what these team roles are. So first of all, we have team leader or team leaders. The team leader is the primary point person for the team, and they work with their team members and the paid organizer to develop and execute a plan in their neighborhood. So the team member the team captain will set goals and distribute and delegate work to their team members. Okay, and so going into the specific roles in teams, while also keeping in mind that every team is different. No two teams look alike. So this is just maybe the ideal structure, or is possible. Not every team's going to look like this. But some teams will have a canvas captain. So maybe this person is responsible for making sure that when we have that Saturday canvas, we have all the materials ready to go. Maybe they're organizing the canvas out of their home. Maybe you have a phone bank captain who's responsible for that Wednesday weekly phone bank and making sure that they're calling volunteers to get them there and making sure that we have pens and everything that we need to have a good phone bank. We can also have a voter registration point person who's responsible for doing voter registration events in their area. A comfort captain. Maybe somebody really wants to be involved, but they hate making phone calls and knocking doors, but they make some good cookies. We can use that. And also, event person, maybe somebody that coordinates for special events or social things. Or you could just be a general volunteer that says, you know, I will help out wherever you need me. Are there any other volunteer roles that you can see being?
Data captain.
Data captain, yes. Incredibly important.
Related might be social media coordinator.
Even better, yes. Great. Anybody else?
Transportation coordinator to get the voters to the polls.
Yes, great. Anybody else? Oh, sorry, a transportation team person. We could have an absentee ballot person who's responsible for collecting the absentee ballots as they come in and doing that ballot chasing. So what I'm trying to get at is we can really customize each team to the team members' needs and desires. Okay, so moving on. So in this first phase, we are going to be using house districts as the team turfs. While this seems kind of big, we wanted to start off with a large geographic area so that we can then break down into smaller areas as we progress and more people get involved. And the way that we'll know when a team is ready to break up into 2 smaller areas is when the team has maybe multiple people for each role and can handle breaking down into 2. And so all of this sounds really good on paper, but how do we get there? What are our first steps that we can take? Well, I'm glad I bring that up because so our first steps in May, we are encouraging each team to plan an event for May. I'll get into some suggested events, but really, we don't care what you plan, as long as it's something to begin to build this infrastructure. Because our thinking is that if we can begin to build the team infrastructure now, come June, once we have our candidates, we will be able to really hit the ground running. And so what are some prospective events that we can do as our first step as a team? Voter registration events can be really, really great. we need to expand the electorate. There's so many young folks that are just not registered to vote, and we really do need to get them to the polls. And so if your team is interested in doing a voter registration event, we can talk about the most efficient ways to do that. We could do, you could clipboard with voter registration forms. We can set up a table somewhere. We also have targeted information about which precincts have the most potential new voters. So we can work with you to do that. Another great idea, one of my favorites, is a neighborhood social gathering. So as a first step, maybe throw a potluck, a picnic, something just to get a beer thing, find some politics, something to just get folks out and start developing these relationships. Another possible event that we can do in May, voter contact, everybody's favorite. Knocking doors and making phone calls. And so if your team decides to do that, we want to stay away from the same people that all the gubernatorial candidates are calling. And so if you want to do some voter contact efforts, we can talk to people, Democrats that didn't vote in 2016, Democrats that don't vote in midterms. Another key demographic would be folks that were mailed voter IDs. We have all of that information in the van, and the problem with these folks is that they were mailed a voter ID. A lot of them have thrown it away or didn't even know they got it, and come election day, this is really going to disenfranchise people. And so if we can get ahead of the curve on that and start talking to these people and making sure that they have everything they need to vote, we're going to be in a much better position come November. And so yeah, last point, whatever your group wants. I mean, these are really your teams. And so we want you to have ownership over what you guys are doing. We are hiring organizers that some will be starting in Linn County and our other bigger counties in the middle of May. And when we bring these organizers on, they're going to be working directly with all of the teams to help accomplish your goals. And so before I turn it over to you guys and we start talking in our team groups, I also wanted to mention our June 9th and 10th weekend of action. This is the weekend after the primary. And so we would like to have a statewide weekend of action to show that Democrats are energized, we're organized, and we're ready to win in November. So you don't need to start planning everything out for June, but kind of just keep that in the back of your mind. And maybe if we have time, talk about it at your group to see what your group might be interested in. Yes?
You brought up voter IDs.
Yes.
Are they going to be required in November's election, like driver's license or something other than? Okay,
so you do not. It gets a bit convoluted. And feel free to chime in, Valerie, our great auditor employee. And so no, IDs are not required, but you do need to prove your identity.
You will be asked to show them. It will go faster if you do.
Yeah.
But there's a safeguard if people can't, that there's an additional oath they can sign just this year.
Yes. Yeah, so you can sign an affidavit, attest like swearing to your identity, but we really are encouraging everybody to have their IDs. So now, here comes the exciting part. We're going to discuss. So I want to turn it over to the team tables. And then at your group, let's first introduce ourselves so we know who we're talking to. And then, if you have not already, I would encourage everybody to fill out the team member contact info sheet. So that then I will be collecting those at the end of the night, making a copy of it, and then getting that out to all team members so you guys have each other's information. Also, on the right-hand side of that sheet, there's a spot that says prospective volunteer role. Just write down what you might be interested in, or maybe what you're not interested in. This doesn't seal you in to that role. It just helps everybody know what you might be interested in, what your strengths are. And so once you do that, let's brainstorm a May event. Let's try to get something going. And so there's also a sheet of paper that says that's the event reporting sheet. So for the May event, it'll ask for the point people who are kind of maybe taking the lead on the event, what kind of event, and then hopefully if you get that far, where and when. Yeah, and you can also, if you guys make it that far, feel free to put some thoughts about what you would like to do for the June weekend of action. But if you don't, we still got a little bit of time, so we can deal with that later. And then, so I will collect the forms, both the contact information form and the event form at the end of the night, make copies of them, and then make sure they get back to you. Another thing that might help guide your thinking is that also at every table, you should have a breakdown of the number of Democrats, Republicans, and no party in your House district, and also their turnout level for the past 3 elections. Also on the far left is the number of people in your House district that were mailed voter IDs. So that can give you maybe a better idea.
What was that data, the voter registration data taken?
Okay, so I just pulled that from Van yesterday. And so it's always going to be a little bit off because it takes about 4 weeks for somebody to register and that to get in Van. So it's a rough estimate, it's not, but it's just to help guide your thinking.
2 questions.
Yes.
Did you email you when you have your PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Yeah. And number 2, when we're working, can you put it back on that slide that had the ideas on it?
Yes.
Kevin, some of us are working for gubernatorial candidates and may not have time until after possibly even the convention to do a lot for the coordinated campaign. What do you suggest?
Well, I think as long as you're out there helping out and organizing, that's great. That's great. I mean, as much as possible, we would like to get this team infrastructure going, but while also being cognizant of the fact that a ton of people are really involved with other congressional races or gubernatorial races. So, yeah, so I would say it's all right if you don't have a ton of time.
I had just a more specific
Yes.
question. What, when were the voter IDs were mailed out since when?
Okay, so they were mailed out prior to 2018.
First week of December.
First week of December. Exactly. Think about it.
Are these the little pieces of paper that you just send over and over and over again?
That people do not have a driver's license or not driver IDs yet. And they go out again every Monday morning for people whose IDs became more than 60 days expired. Yeah.
Any other questions before we start?
So if the person has lost theirs, do they get a replacement from you or what?
They would have to call the auditor's office and ask to have a new one mailed out to them. And it has to be the voter, it can't be somebody else getting it for them.
Okay. So I would just ask that once your table has your May event kind of thought out, feel free to raise your hand and I'll come over and we can talk about it. And if we have enough time, maybe we'll have groups share with each other. If we have enough time.